Welcome back. It's good to see you. Last time we spoke, we talked about Hitler and Mussolini and their developing, budding friendship. So in 1936, there are two major events that do lead to a warming, a thawing, better relations with the two. Number one, of course, was the Italian invasion of Ethiopia. But in addition, there was a Spanish Civil War. We find that Hitler and Mussolini both side with the same part of the Civil War, or on the same side of the Civil War. So they're going to side with a man named General Francisco Franco, authoritative, a fascist. They both side with the same man, and we see that over time they get closer, more warm in their relations, more commiserating with the two as a result of the Spanish Civil War and their mutual support for Franco. Should also mention, in addition, that as a result of the Civil War in Spain, Hitler gets for the first time a little bit of combat experience for his Luftwaffe. Still a new organization, but in 1936, the Luftwaffe is going to support Franco's efforts during the Spanish Civil War. Think of the Civil War as a proving ground, a training ground for Hitler's Luftwaffe. They get their first combat, and German bombs do rain down on Spain during this time period. Hey, speaking of World War II, let's go there now. September 1st, 1939, hugely profound, significant, a date of major 20th century implications. So September 1st, 1939, Poland is invaded by Germany. So German tanks roll into Poland. This, in fact, starts World War II. So we should mention that major shift philosophically in terms of military or war doctrine from World War I to World War II for Germany. In World War I, as you know, they fought defensively, they were entrenched much of the war. World War II, the doctrine is based upon speed and power and annihilation and force and new technology, and this idea of trying to intimidate or demoralize their opponent. So we call this war philosophy in World War II for Germany Blitzkrieg. They're going to incorporate a style called Blitzkrieg. You spell Blitzkrieg B-L-I-T-Z-K-R-I-E-G. So Blitzkrieg, which means lightning warfare, is going to be the call of order for Germany to start World War II in Poland. Now there are two components to Blitzkrieg. The first one, again, is demoralizing. It comes from overhead. The first component is incessant bombing by the Luftwaffe. So bombs rain down on Poland. They demoralize, they desecrate the land, and working in tandem with the bombing from overhead, we have the unveiling of armored divisions, brand new tanks called Panzers. Panzer is P-A-N-Z-E-R. So the Panzers in World War II are more efficient, they're faster, they're stronger, they're more durable, certainly. The Panzers are rolled out. There's also armored divisions of trucks and armored vehicles and motorcycles. So it's a full-fledged operation, both land and on the ground, that represents the new doctrine for Germany. Where do they go first with their Blitzkrieg? They go symbolically to the Polish corridor to right that wrong, to send a message to the West that you erred, you were way too unfair to us, unjust at Versailles. They go to the Polish corridor first, and then they go east from there. Guys, truth be told, this is pretty much going to be a walk for Germany through Poland. The Polish army is fairly primitive, fairly weak. They're going to run roughshod over Poland. It takes about 1 month to occupy Poland. About 1 month. And, towards the very end, Stalin's going to bring the USSR and their army to the border and help out Hitler. He didn't really need the help at all, but he wants that land in Lithuania and Estonia as promised by the Nazi-Soviet pact. So the USSR also arrives to help clean up the scraps at the end of the campaign in Poland. It takes about 1 month, and then that campaign is over. Now, I should mention right now that something happened 2 days after the invasion of Poland that left Hitler completely dumbfounded, stupefied, gobsmacked. He was in utter amazement. 2 days after the war began, on September 3rd, 1939, the English and the French, after years of appeasement, after years of relative weakness, they declared war on Germany. So utterly shocked was Hitler by this transformation after years of apathy. So let's talk for a little bit now and really here lead up to the campaign against the French. Now, what happened immediately after Poland was occupied by Germany? It's now October and November of 1939. Nothing happened. Nothing. It was a very severe winter, and for several months and more, nothing happened in terms of real conflict or expansion as World War II began. That's going to change then come April of 1940. So April of 40, we're going to see Germany renew aggression, this time against Norway and against Denmark. So in April 1940, we see renewed aggression and conflict. Germany quite easily takes Norway and Denmark. Let's now get to France. Let's look at the German advancement, militarism against France. In your notebook, maybe jot down Battle of France. So Battle of France, let's look a little bit at the problems that are going to be issues for the French as this campaign, as this war begins for them. So the French have some problems. First of all, the first point is that from, again, October all the way until April, May, what happened along the Western Front? Nothing. There was bad weather, there was no conflict. This is referred to as the phony war. The phony war, as if, hey, there was no war, we were promised a war, nothing happened. So the phony war goes all the way from October to April, May of 1940. My point is that when a war first takes place, one of the few positive things for the people is that surge of nationalistic zeal, the enthusiasm, we'll take Germany down. All of that enthusiasm and that passion was all lost because nothing happened. Historians refer to that period either as the phony war or as the Sitzkrieg, Sitzkrieg. Sitzkrieg means sitting war. Nothing happened. It was phony. It was a Sitzkrieg. So all passion, all zeal is lost for the French army, for their citizens, morale at an all-time low during this time period. Now the second problem has to do with the French philosophy as the war begins. Now, as you know, Germany was going more offensive, more technology, more speed, more power. What did the French do? Now, after World War I, when they were fighting with elan vital and spirit and passion and zeal, and with bayonets leading to massive casualties, they were fighting the wrong way in World War I. They're going to fight the wrong kind of war again now as World War II begins. It's an offensive war except for the French. Beginning in the mid-20s, as you know, the French began building 900 some miles along the French-German border, a steel reinforced with concrete subterranean style Maginot Line, Maginot, the Maginot Line. So the French are like, yes, World War I, it was defensive, and the next war should have happened, it will also be defensive. We're going to do defensive trench warfare again, but we're going to do it better and use concrete, and we're going to use steel and the best of the best. 900 miles of the Maginot Line. So the French plan now is to hide behind the Maginot Line and play defense in this next conflict. It's not going to go very well. Two reasons why. First of all, understand that there are many, many, many miles of frontier north of the Maginot Line. It stretches all the way from where it ends to the English Channel. Belgium had promised to partner up with the French and build their portion of the Maginot Line to prevent future aggression by Germany. But Belgium got tired of French appeasement of Hitler, and they decided to not build the Maginot Line. There was hundreds of miles of territory to outflank the Maginot if need be. Secondly, right in the center of a rugged mountainous area known as the Ardennes Mountains, Ardennes, right in the center of the Maginot Line in a region called the Ardennes, the French came to the conclusion that this area is way too rugged for tanks to climb anyway. Okay, a tank could never get over this rugged stretch of territory based upon World War I tanks. But now the new Panzers are a different story. So, guys, here we go. The date is May 10th. May 10th, 1940. The Germans are going to attack with ease Luxembourg, Belgium, and the Netherlands, and they also began their offensive against France. May 10th, 1940, we're going to see the German army invade France. And as I suggested or implied earlier, it's not going to be much of a problem. The German panzers are going to outflank the Maginot Line and begin crossing directly across northern France from the east to the west. In addition, German panzers go up and over that gap, that opening in the Ardennes Mountains. And again, it's a brand new style tank. It's no problem at all for the new German tanks. They outflank to the north and they go right through the Ardennes. And almost immediately, May 10th, we're going to see the Battle of France commence. And it commences with the French army in full retreat from the east to the west, angling to the north as well. This leads us now to a very, very important moment for the French in this conflict. We're going to see that the German panzers, the German blitzkrieg, does divide the French army in half. Classic divide and conquer. Some troops go to the south towards Paris. Other troops go up north towards the beaches along the English Channel. And we're going to see a classic, iconic moment for the French in this campaign and in this war. But understand, it's a great moment of heroism, but it involves the English, not the French. Let me explain. So, late May 1940, May 26th to be exact, we're going to see what's called the Battle of Dunkirk. The Battle of Dunkirk, also known as the Miracle of Dunkirk. And we have 500,000 French troops, mostly French troops, based on the beaches or trapped on the beaches at Dunkirk. So 500,000 troops are trapped for the French on the beaches at Dunkirk. They can't go north, it's the English Channel. They can't go south because it's the German army and the Luftwaffe overhead. So we're going to see over an 8-day period, the evacuation or the miracle at Dunkirk involves a flotilla of English vessels who come across the English Channel to try to save these French allies. When I say flotilla, it's a whole collection of boats. We've got ferries, we've got pleasure crafts, we've got rowboats, we've got tugboats. Any boat they can find in England is brought forth across the English Channel with the RAF, or the Royal Air Force, their Air Force overhead, protecting these boats. So it's a great moment of heroism. French soldiers are trapped and brought over to England for the remainder of the war. They do salvage, or they save the lives of 300,000 French soldiers during this evacuation, this miracle at Dunkirk. Now, it's not all good news, obviously. So we're going to see here, about 10 days later, a day that will live forever in infamy. We're going to see June 14th, 1940. June 14th, 1940. This was inevitable by now. The Nazis are going to march on Paris. They take the capital city of Paris, June 14th, 1940. And again, this whole juxtaposition of Nazism with Paris, it's a very awkward thing even now to talk about, because when you think about Paris, you think of freedom and intellectual thought and liberation, a city that stands for many, many wonderful things, but not oppression. But again, On the 14th of June, the Nazis do take the city of Paris, and they're going to force the surrender of France. The war just began less than a year ago, and the French are already surrendering. They're already out of the war. Now we're going to see Hitler, and as you know, he's a student of history. Hitler has his people track down that railroad car from 1919, again known as railroad car 2419D, the same railroad car where Foch was going to accept the surrender from Germany at the end of World War I. And they're going to accept the terms this time from the French in the same railroad car. And this time we're going to see, again, Henri Claude Pétain. Pétain, a great hero in World War I. Pétain becomes an absolute scoundrel because of the conditions the French are going to accept in June of 1940. Let me explain. So the French now are out of the war in June. They're going to divide France into two, okay? First of all, 3/5 of France will now belong to Germany. 3/5 of the geographic configuration of modern-day France goes over now and belongs to Germany. We call it occupied France during this time period. It includes the entire coastline. So you can see later on my images on Schoology that the way they configure the new occupied territory belonging to Germany, all the area on the coast, this is global war and naval power is very important. So 3/5, including the whole coastline, now belongs to Germany. The area in the deep south of France goes by the name Vichy France. Vichy France. V-I-C-H-Y. V-I-C-H-Y. Vichy France is the new French state during World War II, the remainder of the war. Vichy France, based at the spa town of Vichy, headed up by Marshal Pétain, Henri Philippe Pétain. So Pétain and the Vichy France is known historically for this. This explains the infamy. This explains the horrible reputation for Pétain the remainder of these years. Vichy France is associated with being a puppet state to Germany. They're a puppet state, they're a satellite kingdom essentially, and really Pétain is known for offering up French Jews to Hitler and to Germany. So Pétain and Vichy France, they're puppets, and they're going to offer up willingly French Jews, becomes the basis for the Holocaust during this time period. Many of those Jews do die tragically in the camps of Nazi Germany. Thirdly, one more government to mention during this time period. We have a third government called the Free French. The Free French are not based in France. It's actually a government in exile based in London, made up of many people who are soldiers who had escaped across the English Channel at Dunkirk, headed up by an individual who will play a huge role in French politics the remainder of the 20th century. The Free French, based in London, a government in exile, headed up by Charles de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle, so it's D-E space G-A-U-L-L-E. Charles de Gaulle leads a government in exile called the Free French, and every day he gives these impassioned speeches from London that are broadcast back in France. And the message is pretty clear: toe the line, we are Frenchmen. After the war, things will resume back to the old ways, but keep the faith. Eventually the French, or France, will return. So you have three governments essentially. You've got Vichy France, you have occupied France, controlled by the Germans, and you have de Gaulle's Free French, located in London. So guys, by June of 1940, the French are out of the war. Where do all eyes shift now? Where does the focus of Hitler turn now? Let's see, America, not yet in the war until another year or so. In addition, the USSR, not yet an ally yet. The USSR is still with Hitler. The French, out of the war. Luxembourg, Belgium, Norway, the Netherlands, okay? They all now, and Denmark, they're all part of the Nazi regime. So all eyes turned towards England. Now the same day that the invasion of France began, May 10th, 1940, the apostle of appeasement, Neville Chamberlain, under pressure did step down as the Prime Minister of England. The individual who was chosen was handpicked by the king to replace him was Winston Churchill. Conservative Prime Minister Winston Churchill. This was the right guy at the right time for the English. A complete foil to some of the insipid politics of Chamberlain. So Big Winnie was a Nazi hardliner. He would never capitulate to the Nazis. He's a Nazi hardliner. He's a lover of all things British. He hates tyranny in every way, shape, and form. So not long after the Battle of France ends and the French are bumped out of the war, there is a message sent to Churchill from Hitler. And Hitler says, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to offer you a chance to keep your island autonomous and free. Give Germany, Europe, give us the continent, and you can have your island. I will leave it alone. So the message is very, very clear back to Hitler. Never. I will fight you tooth and nail. So Winston Churchill says no to this offer from Hitler. And shortly after, he gives a very famous speech at Parliament, does Churchill. He says, ladies, gentlemen, I think it's pretty safe to say that the Battle of France is now ended and the Battle of Britain will soon commence. So if you want to put down here a header in your notebook, we're now in the summer of 1940 and all eyes are going to shift to the Battle of Britain and the Nazi attack on the city of London especially, but really all over the island of Britain. Okay, so Hitler's long-term plan called for kind of a sweet, engaging combat name. Hitler was planning for later in the summer of 1940 an amphibious attack across the English Channel. He wanted to attack England directly, an amphibious direct attack. He was going to call this operation Operation Sea Lion. So Operation Sea Lion was going to be an amphibious attack by the Germans across the English Channel. Now he believed, as did his generals, that to make this happen, to make this Operation Sea Lion a success, they had to control the airwaves as well as the seas, okay? So the Navy and the Air Force. So what's going to happen here, in the summer of 1940, Hitler is going to begin in July of 1940 what is called the Battle of Britain. The Battle of Britain is going to be exclusively an air raid. It's an air raid by the Luftwaffe beginning in the summer of 1940. And initially it's going quite well for Hitler. Their initial philosophy was to hit all the industrial cities of England, dropping bombs on various industrialized places, Leeds and Sheffield and Manchester, all of the major industrial cities. So let me say it again. The initial plan for the Battle of Britain, which was all about controlling airspace, was to have the Luftwaffe attack the cities, attack factories, attack certainly naval centers as well, so the boats and the planes, airstrips, industrial centers, harbors as well. This is going fine initially for Germany, and something happened where, again, his megalomania, his ego got the best of him. September 7th, something changed. September 7th, 1940, it's a philosophical shift by where Hitler is going to stop bombing airstrips, munitions factories, harbors, industrialized cities. Every night, the next 57 nights. So for 57 straight evenings, the Luftwaffe arrives in London exclusively, and they bomb London every evening, again for 57 straight nights. This is still a component of the Battle of Britain, but it goes by a different name. We refer to those 57 nights as the Blitz. The Blitz. So the Blitz is going to be the all-out attempt at the destruction of the ages-old center of English life, the city of London. So ultimately, we're going to see that this becomes Hitler's undoing in the Battle of Britain. The shift in focus towards London becomes part of his undoing. I want to explain here several reasons why the English are able to maintain, this is a little bit of a spoiler, how are the English able to maintain and avoid falling to the evil of Hitler and the Nazi Party and the Luftwaffe? So, number one, the first reason for, English success during this campaign has to do with Big Winnie himself. Okay, Churchill inspires a great love of England. He inspires a great confidence in himself, in the government, in the military as well. There's something about the oratory prowess, the conviction, the love of England. People can read these things in his speech giving, in his oratory skills. So again, Churchill loves England. He conveys this to the people, and he becomes an oratory master during this time period. He refers to the Battle of Britain as England's finest hour. It's their finest hour. He uses, he peppers into his speeches things like, we will win this conflict against our enemy through blood, sweat, toil, and tears. So number one is the impassioned speech giving of Churchill, who rallies the masses against a foreign foe. Number two has to do with technology. Again, the second reason why England holds during the Blitz and the Battle of Britain. Number two, technology. Number one, the Royal Air Force. They're going to fight, pretty much as well as the Luftwaffe. So man on man, plane to plane, the Royal Air Force is going to fight just as well as the Luftwaffe. Almost a draw, maybe a little bit better. They had two famous planes, did the RAF. One was the Hurricane, the other was the Spitfire. So this is the RAF, their Spitfire, their Hurricane. Now back to the technology as well. They had radar. So the English had radar before the Germans did, and they were able to, at that point, ascertain how many, or detect how many planes were coming from Germany, and how many, and what altitude, and what time would they arrive. So they had radar with the RAF before Germany had the same technology. In addition, for the Battle of Britain and the Blitz, England's able to develop their version of the code-breaking machine used by Germany. Theirs is called the Enigma, as you might know. So Germany has the Enigma, and by the Battle of Britain, the English inventors were able to create their own version called the Ultra code-breaking machine. So now they had top intelligence information about the German plans. Now, famously and romantically, the third reason why the English do hold during this conflict, lastly, has to do with what we refer to as Churchill's army. What was Churchill's army? The civilians of London. The civilians of London, they fought themselves, Churchill's army, with amazing high courage. They worked several jobs. By day, they worked as bankers and accountants and doctors and lawyers and teachers. And then at nighttime, they worked a second job, maybe in a munitions factory. And the third hour, the third shift, they worked as air raid wardens, warning the people of London there were planes oncoming. So air raid wardens and firefighters and munitions factories, the people of London fight back and they hold out against the tyranny of the German Luftwaffe. They work multiple jobs, and famously, they can't go home because their houses are destroyed or they're easy targets for the German Air Force. Famously, the citizens of London, 11 o'clock at night, 12 in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, they take their toothbrush, they take their blankets, they take all the provisions, and they all sleep subterranean, underground, in the subway to save themselves. Okay? So the people of London also hold out along with technology, radar, ultra, and of course, Churchill's inspires wonderful confidence in the government and the military during this time period. Ultimately, in November, after 57 evenings of direct attack, eventually Hitler realizes the Battle of Britain's not going to work. Therefore, Operation Sea Lion is not going to happen either. So the English do hold against incredibly tall odds. Where does Hitler and where does Germany now turn their focus after the defeat against the British? They now turn their focus back to the east against the USSR. He's going to break that pact. The Nazi-Soviet pact with Stalin is going to be broken, and that would be our next conversation. Thanks, folks. Have a great evening, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.